Hey everyone, in this quiet descent into another time, you are a peasant. The last one left alive after the Black Death. The year is 1352. The plague has passed. It didn't knock, it didn't ask, it simply took. Half of Europe lies buried in shallow graves, and the other half stares at the dirt, wondering why they were spared. You are one of them. You have survived, though no one told you what you're supposed to do with that. If you enjoy stories like this, leave a like and tell us in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is. There's something oddly comforting in knowing we all try to fall asleep, even when the world outside feels like it's falling apart. Now, close your eyes. The wind outside is quiet. The sky above is vast. The land has fallen still, not with peace, but with absence. This is the silence that comes after the end. You don't remember the moment the plague arrived. No one does. There was no great roar, no clap of thunder, no horsemen streaking through the sky. Just a cough, a fever, a neighbour who stopped coming outside, then another, then your sister, then your mother, then silence. It moved like smoke, invisible, choking, and everywhere. You were too young to understand what it was, too old to ignore it. By the time it passed, the village had emptied itself. Doors hung open like mouths too tired to close. Chickens pecked at the roots of houses. Fields once combed by calloused hands gave way to wild stalks and bramble. The church bell stopped ringing after the friar collapsed mid-sermon. He coughed blood onto the altar, then never stood up again. No one buried him. He lies there still, you assume. He always said faith would carry him through. Turns out faith wasn't great at fighting bacteria. You wake now in a bed you made yourself, if you can call it that. A pile of rags and straw that no longer harbours fleas, only because there's nothing left alive to feed them. The roof leaks when it rains and creaks when it doesn't. The fire smoulders out every night and is always reluctant to return in the morning. You've grown used to the cold, or rather, the cold has worn you down into something it can live with. There is no rooster. He died weeks ago, probably eaten by something larger, hungrier, and less sentimental about farm hierarchy. So you wake instead to the quiet. Not peaceful quiet, hollow quiet. A quiet that stretches out for miles and miles and tells you no one is coming. You move slowly. There's no rush. You've got the entire countryside to yourself. The boots you wear are split at the toe. You've stuffed them with scraps of old tunic. You tie them shut with fraying string. Once your uncle mocked you for having soft feet. He died screaming, his legs purple and blistered. You think of him often. The air smells of smoke and damp moss. In the mornings, mist hugs the earth like a body remembering warmth. The sky is always the same dull shade of grey. Not stormy, not clear, just undecided. You miss the sun. Not for what it did to your skin, but for the way it made the world feel slightly less cursed. Your first task every morning is simple. Stay alive. Food doesn't gather itself. The garden lies choked under weeds. You dig with your hands because the hoe snapped in two during the frost. There are turnips mostly, a few wild greens. You chew slowly, without salt, without fire, without thanks. Gratitude has become a luxury. You reserve it for moments when your stomach doesn't cramp at night. Water comes from the stream, a thin ribbon that cuts through the trees behind the cottage. Once it was a place of laughter. Children played there. Women washed linens. Old men told lies about their youth. Now it gurgles softly to no one. You kneel, cup your hands, drink. The taste is metal and mud. You swallow anyway. It won't kill you. The plague already tried that. The barn is half collapsed. The ox is gone. You found its body weeks ago, stiff and bloated beside the fence. It wasn't the plague, just bad luck. Or good luck, depending on how long you let the meat hang. You salted what you could, smoked the rest and tried not to think too hard while chewing. Sometimes you venture farther, to other farms, other homes, all empty. You don't knock, you just enter. If there are bones, you nod politely and take only what you need. Pots, a cracked mirror, an axe, a coat that doesn't fit but fits better than death. At night the fire crackles in its stone cradle, throwing shadows against the wall. You sit beside it, silent. Not out of reverence, but because there's no one left to talk to. Your voice has grown hoarse from disuse. You speak only when needed, to curse a jammed door, to pray quietly for a good frost, to whisper someone's name when their face begins to fade from memory. You try not to remember the worst of it, the sounds, the smells, the way the bodies were stacked behind the chapel until the ground stopped accepting them, the way your brother's hand felt in yours as he went still, the way you didn't cry until 3 days later when his dog sat outside the door whining to be let in. The world is not quiet because it has healed, it is quiet because it has bled out, and you are the stubborn clot still holding on. There are no maps for where you are, no stories for what comes after a world ends. You write your own, day by day, in blisters and broken fingernails and cold soup and hard sleep. You keep going, not because you believe it will get better, but because stopping feels like disrespect. And yet, there are mornings, strange ones, when the birds sing again, when a breeze moves through the grass just so, when the sky, just for a second, forgets to be grey. On those mornings, you feel something close to peace, not joy, not yet, but peace. Like the earth itself is tired of mourning, you are still here, you are still breathing, and that counts for something, even if no one is left to tell you so. The days blur, not from distraction. There is no screen to scroll, no meeting to forget, no calendar choked with appointments. Time here is marked by the slow decay of everything once built. A shutter finally falls off its hinge. A cart collapses under its own rot. Your hands, once small and soft, are now more callous than flesh. You used to know what day it was by the sound of the church bell, or the routine of others. Now it's just morning, then not morning, then black. You don't have the luxury of a breakdown. There's no therapist behind the hedgerow, no hotline scribbled on a wall, no warm bath and scented oils waiting to help you unwind. If you cry, you do it quietly, into the crook of your elbow while sitting on a broken fence post. Then you wipe your nose on your sleeve and get back to digging potatoes. The emotional toll doesn't announce itself. It settles, slowly, like the mildew in your roof. You don't notice it until the weight starts cracking the beams. Sometimes you walk to the edge of the village just to see if someone's come back. They haven't. The fields are still empty. The roads are still silent. The inn's door still swings open in the wind like someone might stroll in any minute. But no one does. The towns are not towns anymore, just hollow teeth in the gums of the land. You wonder if this is what the world looks like after a sin too big to name. A punishment so thorough it didn't leave time for repentance. You remember hearing once, probably from the friar, that this was God's doing, that the sickness was a wrath sent for corruption, for excess, for turning from virtue. And you remember thinking, if that's true, then why did it take the good ones first? You didn't see the nobles die. They were already gone, hidden in their stone towers, far from the coughing crowds. But the baker's daughter, the boy who couldn't stop stuttering, the woman who used to give away herbs for nothing but a smile, they all went quickly. The ones who fed people, the ones who sang, the ones who still hoped. And you? You stayed. There's irony in that. The unskilled, unremarkable, unimportant peasant, left behind to rebuild a world he never had a say in. You're not a chosen one. There's no epic story here. Just a pair of sore hands and a pile of firewood. In modern times, people write survival guides. They plan for crises with laminated checklists and bug-out bags. You don't have that. You have instinct and a rusty knife. You're not thriving. You're enduring. Which for now is enough. The lice are back. You noticed them yesterday when scratching behind your ear drew blood. They live in your tunic, which hasn't been washed since... You don't remember. You boil it in the stream. The steam rises like a ghost. You stomp it with rocks. Then you wear it again because you have nothing else. Bathing is less of a ritual and more of a consequence. If the weather is warm enough, you dunk yourself in the river. Clothes and all, you don't undress. Not because of modesty, but because removing layers feels like peeling away protection. You scrub with a flat stone. There's no soap. Your skin comes away red, raw, and still not clean. Back in the world that will come centuries later, people debate the importance of self-care. Here, it's just not dying. If your teeth ache, you chew on willow bark. If your foot swells, you soak it in mud. If your thoughts turn too dark, you try singing. You forget the words halfway through, but the tune helps. Occasionally you spot wolves. They don't approach. You don't run. There's a mutual understanding between survivors. They are lean now too. Even the apex predators have been humbled. Once you climbed the hill above the village to look down at it all. From there it resembled something small, manageable. You could trace where homes once stood, where paths connected lives, where smoke once curled from chimneys like lazy ribbons. Now there is only the long grass reclaiming stone and timber. You sat on a rock and watched a deer pick its way through a ruined stable. Nature doesn't mourn the same way people do. It just takes back what was borrowed. The old world is not coming back. You know that now. Too much is gone. Not just people, but memory, the rituals, the rhythm, the 1,000 unspoken things that made a community work. You can't rebuild something you never understood fully. You can only begin again. And that's harder than anyone ever tells you. There's no market, no barter, no shared tools. If you want something, you find it. If you can't find it, you do without. If it breaks, you fix it. Or you don't, and then you adapt. The days are growing colder now. You feel it in the earth more than the air. The worms are deeper, the birds quieter. The shadows stretch longer across the field. You're not ready for another winter, but winter doesn't ask for permission. You've started storing things, stacking dried roots in jars, boiling herbs into something bitter that might keep the fever away. There's comfort in the work, in the sense that you're still part of something, even if that something is just a stubborn continuation of breath. You haven't seen another person in weeks. Sometimes you catch yourself whispering aloud, not to anyone, just so the silence doesn't feel quite so thick. You tell stories, remember faces, say names over and over again like they're spells to keep the dead from drifting too far. There's a part of you that still hopes someone else made it, hopes one morning you'll spot smoke on the horizon, hopes that all of this isn't just the prologue to extinction. But even if no one ever comes, even if the world stays this empty, you'll still get up tomorrow, you'll still patch the roof, you'll still turn the soil, you'll still carve marks into the doorframe to count the passing of months. Because survival isn't noble, it isn't romantic, it's not a story for bards, it's just a refusal to quit. And right now, that's all you've got. The first and most obvious challenge is food. You're not starving, not yet, but you're walking a tightrope above it. Pre-plague, villages ran on systems, fields were shared, harvests stored, grain milled, and bread baked at the manor's communal oven. Now, all that's gone. The ovens are cold, the mills unmanned, and the Lord's grain stores, if not looted or burned, are locked behind doors with no key. Farming, once a collective effort, is now solitary desperation. You don't own land in the legal sense. Peasants didn't own anything. You just claim what's closest and hope no one stronger disagrees. Crops are hit and miss. The soil's still good, but you've only ever worked a small patch before. Now you need enough to feed yourself through winter. That means learning quickly about crop rotation, weeds, when to sow what, and how to keep birds from stealing everything the moment it sprouts. Livestock are nearly gone. The cows died early on, either from the plague itself or from neglect when their keepers stopped coming. A few wild pigs roam, feral and aggressive, harder to catch than you'd think. Chickens, if you're lucky, can be bartered from someone nearby who found a surviving coop. But protecting them is a full-time job. You've seen foxes, you've seen rats the size of cats, and you've seen what hunger does to people. Speaking of rats, they're still here. Just because the fleas killed off millions of humans doesn't mean the rats learned a lesson. If anything, they're thriving. Without regular cleanups, latrine management, or domestic cats in large numbers, rodent populations bounce back fast. They gnaw at everything. Bags, shoes, stored food, your sleep. You learn quickly to hang supplies, bury waist deep, and seal every gap with whatever junk you can find. Still, they always come back. Next challenge, water. Clean water isn't a given. Rivers are reliable until they're not. Heavy rains flood them with filth. Dry spells leave them stagnant. Wells are safer, but must be inspected. Wood rots, buckets crack, rope frays. Rebuilding even a basic pulley system takes time, and time is expensive when every hour not spent on food is a step closer to sickness. And sickness hasn't gone anywhere. The plague itself has mostly passed, but death still circles, now wearing different faces. Wounds become fevers, infections spread through dirty hands. Childbirth remains a coin toss. Respiratory illness rises with the cold, worsened by cramped shelters and wood smoke that turns your lungs into chimneys. There are no doctors, only herbalists or old women who remember enough to know which plant helps and which one kills. Hygiene is rudimentary. You don't bathe for comfort, you do it to avoid disease. That means hauling water, building a fire, waiting hours just to soak for a few minutes. Laundry's the same. Every clean tunic costs 3 hours and half a day's energy. So you stop doing it often. So does everyone else. Then there's housing. Most survivors live in houses they didn't build. You occupy what's left. Broken cottages, leaning shacks, barns with missing roofs. Repairing one requires timber, nails, tools, and someone willing to help you lift a beam. Good luck with that last one. Trust is rare, and favours are calculated. Rebuilding walls is the easy part. Rebuilding cooperation takes longer. Labour shortages are oddly a blessing and a curse. With fewer people, your value increases. You're not just another body in the field, you're necessary. But the flip side is exhaustion. There's too much to do and too few hands. You work from sun-up to sundown and sometimes past that by firelight. You dig, patch, mend, gather, cook, plan, and wake up aching. The dream of idleness is gone. Survival is now your full-time profession. Social challenges pile up too. With no central rule, every group invents its own laws. One village may operate democratically, another by whoever's strongest. Disputes over land, tools, food, or even rumours turn violent quickly. You have to learn when to speak, when to back down, and when to swing first. Violence is more common than before. With fewer people to enforce peace, justice is personal and brutal. Trade networks have collapsed. Pre-plague, there were peddlers, travelling merchants, fairs. Cloth from Flanders, salt from the coast, spices trickling in from the east. Now, you're lucky to get oats. Even barter is awkward. What is a jar of honey worth when no one can agree on its value? There's no money in circulation. No way to weigh worth besides need and desperation. And the mental toll? That's the shadow following you all day. Grief becomes background noise. You stop flinching at abandoned toys. Stop wondering who planted the apple trees. You can't afford constant mourning, but it seeps in anyway. During moments of silence, at the edge of sleep, when you walk past an empty house and realise you don't remember who used to live there. Religion remains, though it feels more hollow. The church bells don't ring anymore, not unless someone climbs the tower and swings them by hand. Priests are rare. Many died. Some fled. Some went mad. Faith becomes something quieter now. Not the ceremonies, just whispered prayers, private crosses scratched into doorways, muttered psalms while turning soil. Even language begins to shift. Fewer people, fewer dialects, fewer songs. You hear strange accents from wanderers, survivors from other regions. You try to understand each other, sometimes you fail, but the silence between words feels less lonely than before. Education is gone. If you had children, or plan to, there are no teachers left, no books, no writing beyond crude symbols or initials. The knowledge of generations teeters on the brink. You try to remember what you can. Say things aloud, pass them to others, teach by showing. A lost recipe, a planting technique, the way to spot poisonous roots. Time itself becomes strange. No calendars, no feast days. Seasons are how you think now. Planting season, storm season, the season where the river floods. You measure time by what you lost and what you managed to keep. And yet you endure, not because of hope, necessarily. Hope implies a future you can picture. This is more practical than that. You keep going because stopping doesn't help. Because there are things left to do. Because food must be found. Firewood split. Water boiled. And because now and then, in between the cracks, something unexpected happens. A stranger brings salt from another town. A child survives a fever. A tree you thought dead blossoms. A girl laughs too loud. A neighbour offers a second blanket without asking for anything. It's not peace. It's not healing. Not yet. But it's movement. And that's enough to keep going. Time no longer marches forward. It limps. You wake each day not because you're rested, but because lying still too long makes your back seize. There's no point in waiting for the rooster. He's long gone. You rise with the cold, with the pale light through the slats, with the sounds of your own breath in an empty house. The rebuilding never ends, not in the dramatic sense of rebuilding, not monuments or manors or cities, just the tedious, unending mending of small things. A leak patched, a tool hafted, a trap reset, a seed planted and then immediately watched by every hungry eye. You're never done, only paused between problems. Trade has not returned. At best, there are whispers that a road farther west is passable now, that someone passed through with cloth, that another village has survived, fortified, and grown suspicious of outsiders. You consider travelling, but leaving means risking what you've cobbled together. It means stepping into forests that don't forget the dead. You've tried rebuilding the church, not out of faith, but out of habit. The roof collapsed in last winter. The altar was looted. You stacked the stones again, lined up pews from nearby wreckage, and tried to ring the bell. But the rope snapped, and no one came. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mocking. There is no news. Nothing arrives by horse. No proclamations, no harvest tithes. The kingdom, if it still exists, has forgotten this stretch of land. You've heard rumours that nobles died in their castles, barricaded behind their own guards, that priests abandoned the pulpit for the woods, that towns were set on fire deliberately to kill the fleas. The land itself has changed. Fields once tilled are thick with weeds and poppies. Old roads crumble under moss. Trees grow unchecked. Deer return in cautious numbers, but they flee at your scent. You've become a predator by necessity. You've taken to trapping when you can, but every snare, every line, every spear is improvised. Metal rusts. Rope frays. Your hands are stiff and less certain than they once were. You find yourself measuring days by injury. A split nail, a bruised shin, a burn from the kettle. You're falling apart slowly, like the world around you, but there's no audience, no lament. Only the creak of the door, the hiss of a pan, the occasional cry of a hawk circling above something small and dying. Sometimes you speak aloud, not out of madness, but to make sure you still can. Just a name, a question, a warning to no one. Your voice comes out hoarse, dry, like an unused hinge. You haven't had a conversation in months. The last one was an argument with a man who wanted your coat. You kept the coat. He kept the scar. You do see others from time to time, always from a distance. A shadow moving near the tree line, a cart track that wasn't there the day before. Sometimes smoke from a fire. Thin, hesitant, deliberately small. You know what they know. Too close invites conflict. Too far and you might miss the one thing you need. You exist beside each other, like ghosts haunting the same ruin. Children are rare now. When you see one, it doesn't feel real. They don't laugh like the ones you remember. They watch, quiet. Like animals in a strange den. Their eyes are too old for their faces. Their silence is not innocence. It's exhaustion passed down in place of lullabies. The seasons turn slowly. Winter hurts more each year. The cold settles into your bones early and never leaves. Your clothes are patched beyond recognition. Your fingers crack open from the frost. There is no coal, no delivery, no warm hearth shared among kin. Just a fire built from whatever didn't rot first. Spring comes and it's not a relief. It means more work, more wood to chop, more pests to fight, more leaks to plug. The ground thaws just enough to remind you how shallow most graves are. Sometimes you find one while digging for potatoes. You say nothing. You plant anyway. Hunger doesn't respect memory. You've forgotten most feasts, saints' days, holy days, birthdays. None of them matter when the only candle you light is the one you watch burn down to a stub. The calendar is gone. What's left is instinct. You know when the rains come, when the river floods, when the berries turn red enough to be safe. You've replaced holidays with habits. They hurt less when they're broken. The mind plays tricks now more than ever. You wake some nights convinced you heard singing, or footsteps, or laughter from a window that's been boarded up for years. You know it's nothing, just the house settling, or the wind, or your brain replaying sounds from a life when sound meant company. Still, you get up, you check, every time, just in case. Your dreams have dulled. Once you dreamed in colour, of meadows, firelight, faces. Now your dreams are mostly grey shapes and cold water. Sometimes you wake with tears dried in the corner of your eyes and don't remember why. And when you pray, it's not for salvation. It's not even for relief. It's for a break in the cycle. A day without injury. A night with real sleep. You stopped praying for joy a long time ago. No, this is not redemption. This is not the arc of a story that bends back toward the light. This is just life. Scarred, sputtering, bitter. It doesn't move forward. It survives sideways. There will be no great reckoning. No moment where someone rides in and rebuilds everything with gold and grace. There's no record being kept. No song being written. No audience clapping at your endurance. You're alone and the world is still half dead. But you wake up tomorrow anyway. Because you're not dead yet either. There's no day of rest anymore. Not because you're too busy, but because you're too used to motion. You tried once to lie in bed through a morning. The result was an ache in your hips, a panic in your chest, and the creeping knowledge that idleness feels too much like illness. Work becomes ritual. You don't even look at your hands anymore while they sort grain from stone, pluck weeds from the beds, or mend the leather strap on your shovel. They know what to do. You've bled on the same spot of wood so many times it's darker than the rest. Your body's a list of slow failures. You limp more now. Not from any one injury, but from the accretion of many. Your breath is shorter on hills. Your teeth don't all match anymore. One fell out chewing something that was neither meat nor bone, but somehow harder than both. Your hearing dulls, but that's a blessing most days. Insects are your only guaranteed visitors. Fleas, midges, lice, all permanent tenants. You gave up trying to be rid of them. Now you scratch without thinking, sometimes until you bleed, sometimes in your sleep. No one notices, no one comments. They're all scratching too. Disease hasn't vanished, it's quieter, subtler. Nothing like the plague. Damn. That was loud, fast, merciless. What you face now are the smaller killers. A fever that lingers, a cough that turns wet, a cut that glows red with heat. You know how they end. You've seen enough. You just hope they pick someone else first. Food is seasonal, like your mood. In summer, you eat greens and grains and hope the salt doesn't run out. In winter, it's roots and silence. You boil the same turnip for 3 days because it's better to have something warm than something good. Once you tried trapping fish in the stream, you caught nothing. But it was the best hour of your week. You start naming things, not out of sentimentality, just to track what hasn't broken yet. The axe is Old Jaw. The stool with 3 legs is the Judge. The crow that visits the yard each morning is Priest. You don't talk to them, not aloud, but you do nod when they appear. It's rude not to. Every so often someone dies, quietly, without fuss. You find them slumped near the fire or curled behind a shed or halfway up a hill they shouldn't have tried to climb. You bury them. You don't say much, not because you're callous, but because words are finite and you still need them for bartering, warning and barking at dogs. You become part of the landscape, not in a poetic sense, literally. Your clothes match the soil. Your smell is indistinguishable from the woods. Your gait mimics the windbreaks and uneven ridges. If a traveller passed by, they'd mistake you for a scarecrow, until you moved. The church bell fell last year. No one bothered to hang it again. It lies in the grass, half swallowed by weeds. You piss on it sometimes. It's not blasphemy. It's just there. Books don't exist here. You don't remember the last time you saw one. Knowledge has turned into stories told over coals, half-remembered facts shaped like truths. Someone insists salt can ward off ghosts. Another says garlic heals infected wounds. You nod, even when it's nonsense. Sometimes belief is a better painkiller than reality. You haven't seen a noble in years. Not a lord, not a knight, not a single man on a horse who thought himself better by blood. If they exist, they've hidden, or died, or changed clothes and decided they'd rather be poor than hunted. Their castles sit hollow, rib cages of stone cracked and overgrown. Somebody asked once what year it was. No one answered. Not because they didn't care, but because they weren't sure what to count from anymore. The plague, the fire, the last royal tax. Time is elastic. It stretches to cover the gaps you no longer try to measure. Tools are heirlooms now. A knife isn't something you borrow. It's something you inherit, with a story about who used it to kill a wolf or gut a priest. Most of it's probably lies. Doesn't matter. You take care of the knife anyway. It's real, and sharp, and more useful than whoever first held it. Some say a king rules again somewhere far south, that cities are open, that markets are humming. You don't believe it. And even if it were true, they wouldn't come here. You're not part of the kingdom anymore. You're not part of anything but the dirt beneath your boots. There is no legacy. You've carved nothing that will outlast you, built nothing worth engraving. You haven't written your name because there's no one to read it. If your bones are ever found, they'll be anonymous. You've accepted this. Obscurity is the default now. Fame is for fools and the dead. You survive. That's all. Not well, not honourably, not with grace, but you persist. You patch, you scratch, you chew, you spit, you bury, you wait, you curse, you repeat. And the world continues not because you push it forward, but because it hasn't yet stopped crushing you. You wake before the sun now. Not out of diligence, but because sleep is shallow and your back feels like bark and your roof threatens to collapse with every gust. Your joints ache in familiar places, knees, lower spine, the wrist that never healed right after splitting that stone in half because no one else was strong enough. Even when the frost is gone, the pain stays like a story too worn to forget. You sit up slowly. The air isn't warm, but it's no longer hostile. That alone feels like a shift in the world's posture. The hearth embers are still faintly glowing, which is a blessing. Starting a fire from scratch each morning is a gamble. Your flint is old, and your hands don't always obey. You gather dry straw from the corner, stacked neatly the night before, and feed it in carefully, coaxing a reluctant flicker into a flame. You don't whisper to it like some of the others do. Fire doesn't need your affection, just your caution. Your house, if you can still call it that, is patched with every material under the sky. Wood from collapsed barns, stones pried loose from forgotten fences, even strips of cloth nailed over holes where the wind whistles too loud. It's ugly, but it doesn't leak anymore, and no animals sleep inside unless you want them to. That counts as luxury now. Breakfast is as it has been for the past season. Root mash with a hint of dried herbs if you're lucky. mould if you're not. Sometimes you chew without tasting. Hunger becomes less of a sensation, more of a condition. You eat not for pleasure, but to avoid weakness. The human body, you've learned, is absurdly stubborn when it comes to surviving, even when it shouldn't. Water takes most of the morning. The stream is half a mile away and stubborn, lined with slick stones and the kind of mud that eats boots. But it's clean, mostly. Cleaner than the old wells, which haven't been touched since the village started to die. No one trusts still water anymore. That lesson came at too high a price. You carry your pail carefully, not because you're afraid of spilling, you're afraid of having to make the trip again. By midday, your hands are coated in soil, your back damp with sweat that chills the second the wind picks up. You spend hours pulling weeds from a field that was once overgrown, now merely unruly. The earth is stubborn, not barren but wounded, like it's unsure whether to trust the hands that once dug graves into it by the dozen. Still, the shoots come, slowly, reluctantly, but they come. Potatoes, cabbage, even a twisted row of leeks if you squint hard enough. Animals return in fits and starts. A dog with a limp and no master has taken to sleeping near your fence. You don't feed it, but you don't chase it off either. The chickens, the ones you coaxed from a neighbouring ruin, lay eggs when they feel like it. You've stopped counting. One every few days is enough to feel like fortune. A pig you traded for a dull axe now roots in your yard, fattening on whatever scraps it can find. You name it next winter as a joke no one laughs at. You speak less now. Words feel expensive. Most of your conversations are with others rebuilding in scattered huts nearby. Brief, transactional exchanges. Salt? Rope? You seen the goat? No one tells stories anymore. At least not the kind with morals or endings. Just observations. She didn't wake up. The baby's breathing strange. Something took the ducks. These aren't tales, they're warnings. Death still visits, but less theatrically than before. No more purple blotches, no more blackening fingertips. Just fevers that burn quietly. Lungs that rattle through the night. You've dug 4 graves in the last month. Small ones. Too small. You no longer cry. Not because you've hardened, but because grief takes energy you don't have to spare. And yet things change. You notice it first in the air, not the temperature, but the silence. It's less total now. Birds return, not many. But enough to break the quiet that once felt like a death shroud. Their songs are thin, cautious, as if the trees themselves forgot how to echo. But they're songs nonetheless. Children's voices follow. The first time you hear laughter, you assume it's your mind playing tricks. But no. Down by the ruined chapel, 2 of them, dirt smudged, clothes stitched from scraps, chase a dog with a stick. You watch from a distance, you don't smile, not yet. But your grip on the pail slackens, and you forget to count your steps. The village no longer resembles what it once was. That's not nostalgia, just fact. Buildings collapse in slow motion, stone by stone, wood by worm, but some have been rebuilt or repurposed. A granary becomes a sleeping hall. The old tax house stores firewood. The tavern is now a place to dry herbs and gossip about who survived where. No one drinks much anymore, not since the ale ran out and no one remembered how to brew it. A cart arrives one day. A proper cart with wheels that haven't split and a man who claims to be from down south. He offers salt for linen, iron nails for eggs. Most are suspicious. You trade him nothing. But you watch. That's more than you would have done a season ago. That night, a fire is lit in the centre of what's left of the square. Not for warmth, for gathering. People sit close, not touching, not speaking much, but not hiding either. Someone passes around bread baked with the actual flour. Someone else sings. Badly. It's a song no one's heard in years, and though no one joins in, no one stops them either. You still sleep with a blade near your cot. Old habits, older dangers, but the nights are quieter. The wolves howl from farther away, the stars are clearer. You count them sometimes, not for meaning, just for proof. Proof that not everything fell apart. Your hands are cracked. Your feet blistered, your skin is sun-leathered and insect-bitten, but there's meat on your bones again. Not much. Enough. You can carry a log without wheezing. You can swing the axe without stopping every 10 minutes. You no longer look like someone waiting to die, just someone too tired to. One day, you catch yourself humming while washing a pot. No one hears. You stop quickly. But it happens again the next week, and the next. The sprout by the fence has grown. It's a weed, technically. But it blooms. You leave it there. You no longer count how many you've buried. You count how many you've fed. It's a small number, but it grows. You begin to build not just what's needed, but what might be needed. An extra bench, a second shelf, a place for visitors, not guests, just others. You don't speak of the past much. No one does. It's too large, too raw, too easy to fall into. But you do speak of tomorrow. If the frost holds, if the cabbage takes, if the boy survives. That's all hope is now, contingency with breath in it. You don't pray anymore, but you listen when others do, not for answers, for rhythm, for repetition, for the sound of something that insists on going on. You're not whole, not healed, not happy, but you're still here. And that somehow is beginning to feel like something.